Welcome. Today we're going to take a look at how we can use a custom input field that can do a little bit more than just a regular text field using SwiftUI. As you can see right here, I've got my input field struct right here on the screen so we can see the structure of it, and we'll go ahead and go over the details of it, and we'll show how we can actually use it inside an application and make that work. So the first one I'm going to do is we create a regular struct just like normal. It's a SwiftUI view, just like we normally do, but I gave it a name of input field because rather than using this as a view itself, I'm using this as a component that we would use with other views, so I gave it a name of that, so it's an input field. And so we have three variables we're working with. We have a title, a hint, and a result. The title and hint are both strings, and they're just regular lets, no big deal. But they're assigned once, they're just used to actually get that value up and going. However, our result is using a new thing. It's using the binding property wrapper. So the app binding property wrapper allows us so that we can tie a specific view to a changeable value because it's bound directly into that. So if I change that value, it automatically reflects inside the view, so I can have a constantly updating view, which is a really amazing thing. And it goes back into that idea of Swift's single source of truth, that idea that's like, oh, I changed this right here, and the truth is reflected on the screen that we're showing or displaying to the user. So it's a really cool tool with that. So that's where the app binding property wrapper comes into play with that. Inside my view itself, I'm using a VStack. I'm using alignment.leading, so it makes it so they both line up over here on the left. I have a text where I pass the title variable. I'm using the headline property on that. I've used multi-line text alignment to be .leading, so it's like it goes to the left side as well. And then if it has multiple lines on that. And then I use accessibility label and accessibility value as default when I'm working with anything on when I'm working with any of my code, because I want to make sure I'm using the idea of having accessibility on here. It also supports though XC testing, so I can use Xcode to internal test, so I can verify that I'm using the correct components with that. So accessibility is a really good thing. Definitely want to do it, and it also supports testing on that, so we can make it so that people who are using our apps, regardless of the ability level, can use it more effectively. So that's a great thing we can do with that. The next part we have is our text field. The first parameter, unnamed, is just the hint, and that gets stored inside here when I actually show the thing before there's any value inside that. In this case right here, I have a hint when I look at my preview for that. My next parameter is labeled text, and this is the stored text result. And when you're using a text field, it always gives you a string result back. And notice on that result variable, I have the $sign prefix on this. That $sign prefix indicates that it's the bound value of this result variable because it's that app binding, and so that's the bound value. So it will be tied directly, whatever is changed inside that variable is what's going to be displayed to that. So that's where that comes into play. I'm using the accessibility label of the hint, and the accessibility value is whatever is stored in result. So it's like, oh, here's what's going on, and that tells me again the accessibility of what's going on with that. The next one there, disable autocorrection, passing it true. There has been a bug inside SwiftUI for a while where it causes some layout issues if you don't have that. So I put the disable autocorrection true on my text fields as default because in case that bug comes back, hey, I've got a handle for it right here. And then of course I'm using padding. That gives me a little bit of space right here on the left and the right hand side of this, making it look a little bit nicer for my actual structure. Now again, let's go ahead and let's take a look at the actual preview for code for this. So I create an input field right here, and as you can see, my title, just regular string the title. My hint is a hint, and result is a constant passing it stored in the app binding variable. And so the constant wrapper on that says, oh, this is a constant bound value, so I can display those results in preview because since this uses that app binding property wrapper, I have to use that constant to make it so I can display it as a preview. And so that's where you could have that happen. So that's the way you make that work, is by using the constant on that, and allows it to work within that binding. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at this actual in action. We have our numeric only demo view that we use for the numeric only input demo right here. And as you can see right here, it has an input field demo right here. And so my title is numbers. My only type numbers is my hint, which you can see right here is in that light text right there. And the result is stored in the numeric demo values numeric value variable. So it's like, oh, that's where I'm holding that information. And so if I go to my preview right here and I only type numbers, I can see if I start typing F, nothing shows up, but if I type in numbers, those numbers show up, and so that preview works with this. And so I'm using the idea of having on that a result of a numeric value. It only gives me that, so it works so I can actually store that. If I made an observed object or a bound variable right here that would store only a string, that regular string would also work with that. And so again, to make that input field work, we simply have a text input field. We use the app binding property wrapper for the text value that we want to store the results in, and we use that so we can actually make that work with that. I hope this is helpful, and you can do some cool things, make apps that provide user input. Have a great day. Cheers. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.